Book of Mormon, if it made the claim that all Native Americans were descendants of Lehi, that could be tested. But because it doesn't make that claim, it therefore can't be tested with DNA. And so
He does say that.
So the short version of it is the Book of Mormon doesn't present claims that can be tested by DNA. That's the basic response.
Okay.
Well, Simon Southerton has been very critical of this. He's been saying that, for example, the Mesoamerican geography theorists, they've been, it's an ad hoc rationalization of this new evidence. Okay, that these people like Scott Woodward and Michael Whiting, this is just their ad hoc changing of the subject or changing the Book of Mormon. That's not.
So they're running from the evidence.
Exactly,
So
they're running from it.
Okay.
And how they're running from the evidence is they're changing what the Book of Mormon says. Okay, and so because what he'll say is the prophets or past church presidents, they've all claimed that all Native Americans are descendants of Lehi, and he goes in his book and he goes through and tries to document this. Okay, Spencer W. Kimball, for example, who said that all Polynesians are also descendants of Lehi and so forth. Okay,
Right.
Well, I have come across some interesting quotes that we've collected on the Fair Wiki because we discovered when these quotes were being posted on places like the Signature Books website, they were later taken off. And let me read to you some of these quotes that I have.
You're finding quotes on Signature's website.
This is one of these quotes comes
And then they're
from,
being taken off.
Comes from exactly. And you can ask Dan Peterson, and he'll tell you that they've preserved it in print in the Farms Review, because when he came across this, Dan Peterson said he was just floored that Simon Southerton said this, and of course it was quickly taken off the website because they realized that it's validating what the LDS apologists are saying. And here's what Southerton says.
There's irony for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Simon Southerton here. Okay.
Yeah, he says, and listen very carefully. In 600 BC, there were probably several million American Indians living in the Americas. That's what the LDS apologists have noted as well.
Sure.
Okay? If a small group of Israelites entered into such a massive native population, it would be very, very hard to detect their genes 200, 2,000, or even 20,000 years later. But this does not fit the scenario with what the Book of Mormon plainly states, or with what the prophets have said for 175 years. Notice that it's not what the DNA says, but it's what the Book of Mormon says.
Okay.
So Southerton is critiquing the Book of Mormon. He's not critiquing the DNA.
Okay.
And I find that very instructive. But notice the first part. In 600 BC, there were several million Native Americans. If the small group of Israelites entered in, it would be hard to detect their genes. Well, that's what the apologists have been saying the whole time.
Actually, I've done a video earlier on some of Matt Roper's research on the DNA with the ancient Israelites. Who were they? They were mixed blood. You have the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Mesopotamians.
I think because it's Tom Murphy who, in his article in American Apocrypha, he tried to point to the modern Jewish DNA in some of these Jewish populations as a control or as a test to control.
Right, and that's what Meldrum and Trent Stephens, clobbered in their Lehi, the children of Lehi, in their book. Okay.
But that's just one quote. Listen to what else he says.
Oh, he's got more.
He has more.
Okay.
Yeah. This was
now. When was this written?
This was in 2008 on an anti-Mormon discussion board.
Okay.
Dated July 5, 2008. It says, they, meaning the apologists, set up a straw man that I am arguing that according to the Book of Mormon that all American Indians are descendants from Hebrews. I have never claimed this. The vanishing geography theory is an utter desperation. But look what he said in 2005. But does such a scenario fit with what the Book of Mormon plainly states or what the prophets have taught for 175 years? Short answer, no. Southerton just contradicted himself. When on the one hand he says, look, there's all the Native Americans, or there are so many of them that when the Lehites, or if a small group of Israelites were to come, we couldn't take their genes. But the Book of Mormon doesn't say that. The Book of Mormon says that all the Native Americans are descendants from Lehi. And so that's not what the Book of Mormon says. And then in 2008 he says, I never said that. I never said that.
So he's backing off what he did say.
I mean, Southerton is all across the board with this stuff. And I mean,
very
interesting. Here's another quote he has.
Where was this?
2008. This is on the same anti-Mormon discussion board.
Okay.
He posts on a lot of anti-Mormon, or at least on one that I know of, anti-Mormon discussion board.
Okay.
He posts it regularly, and he tries to critique FAIR and Farms. He made a response to the FAIR DNA in the book of response, and so forth. Well, he says, in case anyone from FAIR is unclear, I will repeat what I wrote 4 years ago. If a small group of Israelites entered into such a massive native population, several millions, it would be very, very hard to detect their genes. That's what the LDS apologists
That's what we've been saying. That's what Scott Woodward just told me.
We couldn't detect their genes if Lehi and his family
It's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Exactly.
And we haven't heard. I asked Scott Woodward that specifically yesterday at the first session of our Fair Conference. I asked him point blank. I asked him, can we expect to find Hebrew DNA from Lehi in the Native American population? He said, we haven't hardly even begun testing people. It is going to be physically impossible impossible to test everyone.
Right.
But so we're working off patterns. So now Simon Sederson's saying that.
But
No
again,
kidding.
and
this was just last year.
Yeah, this is just recently when he's
Just
saying
recently.
this. And I find it really interesting because, again, it's not the science that he's debating with the Mormon apologists, it's the interpretation of the Book of Mormon. For example, if we do interpret the Book of Mormon as saying that when the Lehites came to America, they were the only ones there, okay? And they, and Lehi and Sariah and their children are the literal blood descendants of every single last Native American in all North and South America, okay? If the Book of Mormon claims that, which implies a hemispheric geography, right? Which implies that they're all over North and South America, okay? If that's what the Book of Mormon says, then we're in trouble, because that claim can be tested by DNA, as Meldrum and Stevens know. You know, that claim could be tested by the DNA. But if we follow what Brent Gardner says and what John Sorensen say, that no, it's a small Israelite family intermigrating and intermarrying and going into a larger non-Israelite population.
Right.
Okay, and I mean the archaeological evidence is overwhelming that there were other people than Lehi.
Oh, sure.
There's no question about that.
Well, so is the internal evidence in the Book of Mormon following Sorensen's analysis.
Yeah,
he has taken every single statement from the Book of Mormon and put it into a geographical context. That, for me personally, just letting the text itself indicate the parameters of the logic of the movements of the people and the growth, the population growth, I mean, the cultural assimilation and all that. I think that shows really clearly that there were others here.
And Brent Gardner's pointed that too in his new commentary.
And Gardner's
there's
big
this
on
wonderful
that.
passage in, I believe it's 2nd Nephi, right after Lehi dies, and the family separate, okay, Nephi and Laman and Lemuel. And Nephi says that I, Nephi, to take me and my wife and my family, and Sam, his wife and his family, and all those others who would go with me. All the other people, he says, me, Sam, and our families, and everybody else who would go with me. Well, wait a second. He also says who went with Laman and Lemuel and Zoram and all their people.
And everybody else.
So who are these? Who's the everybody else part that's going with Nephi? Because he just said who's going with him and who's going with Laman and Lemuel. He said everybody. So who else is there? And Brett Gardner says this is probably the best indication we're going to get in the Book of Mormon, besides the population dynamics, the migration dynamics, and so forth. You know, not having to read in between the lines like they do, and infer these things and try to flesh these things out through their understanding of the Mesoamerican context. The text states, Nephi says, I took me and my family and Sam and his family and all the others who would come with us.
Yeah. And then they said it was just a short time when they had wars and lots of wars with the armies of the Lamanites. And
exactly.
You figure, the colony couldn't have been 45 people strong by the time they split.
Right, exactly.
And that's assuming a real high birth rate.
Yeah, really,
That's like a kid a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, calm down, Steve.
Well, my bad.
Anyway.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is very
Just
fascinating. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
That's why I say, if you want an apologist for DNA in the Book of Mormon, look no further than Simon Southerton, because he says the same thing that the Mormon scientists are saying. That the DNA or the Book of Mormon, or excuse me, if a small group of Israelites were to enter into a big population of Americans, we couldn't test the DNA.
Yeah,
it would be hard to detect their
be
genes.
Virtually impossible.
And so it comes to a matter of how you interpret the text and how you interpret statements from past church leaders like Joseph Smith and others who, I'll grant, they probably did have a hemispheric idea, but as Mike Ash has shown, I mean, it's obvious we don't believe in infallible prophets. We don't believe that prophets are perfect, or that everything they say is doctrine.
Yeah. But later on in the times and seasons, Joseph Smith was making comments about Catherwood Stevens and his books, and he said, "Gosh, it might be a good idea to compare those with the Book of Mormon cities," because he actually mentioned Zarahemla was down there in Guatemala.
Right, and so
that's interesting.
I just bring that up to say that I'm not to, and I don't want to discard Joseph Smith or say he's a false prophet or anything. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, just like everybody else, prophets are human beings, and as such, they're going to be subjected to their own opinions, their own views, their own ideas, their own, they're going to have to grapple with the information they have, just like the rest of us are.
That's exactly why Joseph said, line upon line, precept by precept, we'll learn.
Right.
And then he also said, if you were to see a vision into heaven, for just 5 minutes, it would obliterate absolutely everything. Well, that tells you right there, none of us know very well.
Yeah, very good. So,
and I have said that several times.
Yeah, so take that for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Scoot over, Jeff. I'm with Jeff Bradshaw, and he has been working on a book in God's image and likeness. You can see the size of this tome. It is absolutely wonderfully gigantic. The thing that astonishes me about it is this is all about our Book of Moses in the Purgatory Prize. How many chapters? is Moses.
6 of the 8 chapters in Moses.
6 of the 8 chapters in Moses. It would take us 20 minutes to read through the book of Moses.